to have to re-enter if you had a question, if you can remember what it was. And we'll, thank you, you're remembering, that's great. And we'll go through those questions. We'll then, I know there's a number of extra recommendations, we'll go through those first, and then we'll get to the substantive there. So we're still in question time, so I'll go to Councillor Hapeta.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. My question's around consultation. The consultation is going to be carried out while other consultation is being carried out. So can you tell us what other consultations going on at the same time?
Good afternoon, Olivia Wicks, Comms Manager. A number of consultations are in the works at the moment. So we've obviously got the annual budget out live now. That ends in a couple of weeks. Nature Calls, you would have heard this morning, we had actually pushed that out to late April as a result of knowing that we also will have plan change tahi, the stormwater strategy, and this one. I guess they are all quite unique. They are all quite unique, and we are trying to, I guess, especially with our strategic planning group, and the number that we've got with them at the moment is how do we space them out, to make it easier for the public to understand each different one separately, but also in terms of, I guess on our side, just being able to physically resource the number of consultations as well.
Okay, my next quick question was around how are you going to get out to people? Is this going to be a letterbox drop? Is you just going to put it on the website and hope for the best? What are we going to do?
Yep, so we have got some stuff outlined in the council report. We will have, I guess on the kind of stuff that we do generally, we'll have the big website hub, we would do the newsletter, social media. We've got in there talking about sending and inviting, say for example, like the Go Medias, those people, previous candidates who've run in previous elections, political parties, community groups, people who we see be quite involved in elections generally each time. And there are a few others there in the council report too.
So who's this aimed at? Who's your audience?
I think that the general public probably will have relatively low interest in this. I think it's probably those people who have a strong interest or have previously run before, who have an interest in how those kind of rules work, and potentially the kind of people who might have candidates who come and door knock and ask to put signs on fences, those kind of things. So the people who've got some of that base level of knowledge, I guess just gearing up to an election anyway, that will capture some general interest as well. I guess it's important to make sure that we make sure that everyone has an opportunity to say, everyone has an opportunity to know, but that we're also sending out stuff to those kind of key targeted audiences that will have a more vested interest.
One final question. Are you worried about consultation fatigue?
That is always a concern of mine. I think the thing that we've all kind of worked on is, and with the work plan, is that they're all quite unique and will be different ones will appeal to different people, which I think is actually quite helpful, whereas in previous years we've had quite similar topics running alongside. So I think we have got some very distinct groups with the different consultations coming up. I guess our job is just to make sure that, yeah, as I said, everyone gets the ability to know about them and the ability to feed in if they choose to.
Okay, thank you, Olivia. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Naylor.
Thanks. My questions were also around the consultation, particularly given that this report appears to only address election signage and not any of the other issues that have been elevated to be addressed through this bylaw. And I note that item 10, the next item, outlines us reconsulting on this later in the year to address the other issues. Is there a concern if we consult twice on the same bylaw in the same year that might seem a bit confusing or unusual to the community?
I think the difference with this, I would say, is that we're going to be able to include that in our messaging up front, that this we're doing this now because of this reason, and you will hear back from us on other topics later. I guess the example that comes to mind was speed limits, where we didn't actually know that there was going to be a change. So, you know, by being able to forewarn people that we will be covering off different areas, just hang tight, you know, we'll talk to you later in the year. Right now we're just focusing on the specific bit, will help us on that front.
Okay, so if there are issues which have been raised by the community, I'm thinking as an example of the vaping signage close to schools, that was raised in 2023, and the people who raised that have been waiting a few years to be able to address that through this bylaw. If they choose to engage with this process to raise those issues and their feedback, will we be able to make changes as a result of that feedback now, or do we specifically need to propose changes in order to address other separate issues other than election signage?
Peter Ridge, General Manager of Strategy and Policy. When we often run consultations and people raise matters outside of the scope of the proposals that we're making, we always keep track of those things. But we do note in our feedback to them that we have been, in most cases, unable to make the change that they've asked for this time. And I think in this situation here, we would be noting back to them that we can take those changes into those suggestions into the next part of the process. If we haven't got a specific proposal, I think we would be very potentially exposed if we made changes based on submissions, because other people wouldn't have been expecting to have the opportunity to make those changes through this part of the process.
And why were those other issues not able to be included with this piece of consultation, to do it once rather than twice?
The reason we split it into two is because the review of the Signs and Use of Public Places bylaw is a very significant piece of work, and there's a lot of complexity we're managing across the range of issues we've identified. The reason we've recommended taking election signs forward separately is because of the urgency to provide clarity for the general election, which is happening later this year. To do the additional work for all the other issues that are covered through the bylaw, we wouldn't have been able to bring it to you today, and that would have meant that we could not have got through consultation and had clear rules in time for the election campaign.
Okay, and final question, what is the latest that we could decide this on this in terms of the election signage and to be in time for the general elections, given it's not till November?
The election's in November, but the campaign period will start, in terms of electoral returns, it's 9 weeks prior to that date, but often election signs can turn up any time in that sort of 3-month period prior to polling day. What we want to do is provide some clarity and certainty for candidates and political parties, so when they're making their plans, they're not planning under one set of rules and then having to plan under different, and then change if the rules change partway into that campaign period. So we're aiming to have this whole process completed by the end of June. There is a small amount of wiggle room, but not a lot, because of the council break that happens in July. Heading into August, we're getting very close to that November 3-month period that we would be quite nervous about making changes. So approving it today allows us to start consultation in early April, just after Easter, with hearings and deliberations to follow before the end of June.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that's questions done. Okay, could we see the additional recommendations that have been... Oh, sorry, Councillor Wood, didn't see you popped in.
In relation to that, sorry,
Oh, okay.
just getting in.
Okay, right, so these are some extra amendments, and we've got moved by Councillor Wood. Right. We're just getting that up on screen for you. I'll read them out so those online can understand. That the bylaw be amended in the following ways prior to consultation. 1, be amended to include a 0.6 square metre limit for residential election sign for local government elections and a 3 metre square for residential election signs for central government elections. Clause number 2, clause 10.9 be amended to remove illuminated signs and digital signs. Number 3, remove clause 10.5 from the proposed bylaw. Number 4, remove clauses 10.12 and 10.13 from the proposed bylaw. Number 5, amend clause 10.3 to read, no site may display more than one candidate advertisement election sign per candidate. And number 6, amend clause 10.4 to read, no site may display more than one party advertisement election sign per political party. Okay, over to you, Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just thought I've had a conversation with legal in light of this recommendation around some of the wording, and before we got into the debate it could be useful to get an opinion from our legal counsel as to the wording of these recommendations to make sure they're comfortable with it.
Just sent through some slight amendments to it for your consideration.
Thank you. I think for the value of having a clean debate, I'm certainly comfortable with them, and I imagine Councillor Johnson will be as well. It's in the same spirit, just cleaning up some of the language. So if officers could amend the wording before we get into the debate so that we're all on the same page, that would save us all some headache.
Okay.
It just needs to also say illuminated, digital or other, as long as it's permitted under the district plan, for the sake of clarity of what we're trying to achieve. So illuminated, digital, or other, that's permitted under the district plan rules for advertising or holds a resource consent. All right, with that there, are you happy for me to get into it, Mr Mayor? Thank you, councillors. I appreciate this is a lot that I've just put in front of you, but I thought there were quite a few issues that I think we could all feel were identified through the questioning, and there were a few different mechanisms we could debate this. We could have 6 different recommendations come to us and move and second and debate each of them, or we could do a catch-all recommendation that obviously can be separated out and voted on separately if you have a particular issue with 2 or 3 or 4, whatever it might be. So there's 5 things we're trying to solve here, and I'll talk you through them as quickly as I can. The first thing we're trying to solve is the change from the status quo in terms of local government election signs and central government election signs. At the moment for local government elections, you can put up a sign of 0.6 square metres on a residential fence. It's being proposed that we increase that from 0.6 to 1.5. I believe that poses a financial barrier to new candidates trying to purchase signs that are 1.5 metres squared large, but it also just produces a visual problem with the quantity of candidates we have for local government elections being 40, 50 or 60 if you take the regional council into account. Trying to have that many signs that large on that many fences just becomes an issue. So I certainly didn't get the feeling in the workshops that anybody had a strong desire to have larger signs on residential properties for local council elections. If you disagree with that, you're welcome to amend this clause. However, for central government elections and the 9-week period leading up to the election, the Government Elections Act, I forget the name of it, section 221B, has been interpreted by the Electoral Commission for the last couple of decades to allow signs of up to 3 metres squared in every locality across the country. The reason being, if you're a party trying to print signs for 68 different councils with 68 different bylaws and rules and timings, it's just a nightmare. So that's the reason it's been interpreted that way, and I think that's a fair reason for it to be interpreted that way, and I see no call or reason to change the status quo, which is you can do those signs for the 9 weeks for the central government elections. So that's what 1 tries to achieve. 2 is trying to fix the issue that we had at the last election around large digital or printed signage. And the concern that Councillor Johnson and I raised in our questioning is that the way that it's currently worded implies that if you had a consented or permissible sign that wasn't illuminated, so let's say Go Media put a 30 square metre sign up on the sides of this building that was consented, but they didn't put lights on it, then a candidate's not allowed to use it. And that creates a grey area that puts us back to square one, which is what we're trying to avoid. The reason that we've slightly changed the wording here is legal want to go away and work on exactly how it's worded, but it more or less says that if it's, because not all of those large signs are consented under the district plan. That's the misconception I think a few of us had. I certainly had it. Some of those signs are simply permitted under the district plan, so they're allowed to be there, and therefore it can't just be on those that hold a resource consent. It needs to be those ones that are permitted or hold a resource consent under the district plan. So that means you're allowed to use the big Go Media, O Media or other signs, as has been standard practice for the last, goodness, many elections up until this one. Clause 3, removing 10.5 from the proposed bylaw, is around the written consent required for every single sign. At the moment, people have private property rights and they are allowed to tell you to take your sign off your fence or simply rip it off yourself if they haven't given consent to that. This is near unenforceable from a council perspective, because the only people that would complain to council they didn't have written consent, or that they didn't have consent, are people who wanted the sign taken down, and I am yet to hear of a case of a candidate being asked to take a sign down and not doing it. So it's redundant. It just creates an additional bylaw that isn't enforceable or practical. It's already standard practice, and people already have rights to their own properties as to what signs can be put in their own fences. Number 4 removes 10.12 and 10.13 from the bylaw. That is regarding the time period that was ascribed to when election signs can be put up. The problem that causes is that there's a number of signs that get put up. If you drive to Wellington, there's about 10 signs that say, we're delivering O2NL. Now, if you have a similar situation in Palmerston North, where a political party is promising or committing to do something, and they put a sign up saying we're doing that, it creates a grey area where, well, is that asking you to vote for them, or is it simply providing you with information? Can MPs have signage on their office with their face and their name on it, advertising who they are? Is that promoting who they are and therefore trying to get you to vote for them? Can you hold a public meeting with a spokesperson prior to the 9-week period? So effectively, by providing a 9-week period, we force officers through the bylaw to have to interpret what an election sign is. And the issue that causes us is that the only way to enforce a bylaw is through legal proceedings and prosecution, meaning that we will have to fight it out in the courts with political parties and candidates until we get a set definition of exactly what constitutes an election sign that can go up within the 9-week period or outside of the 9-week period. And I don't know about you, councillors, but I don't feel like having that fight, and I don't feel like spending that money when really there's not a problem at the moment that we're trying to solve. And the final two are relatively straightforward. It's the intention of what the officers were trying to do. We've just made it slightly clearer. So at the moment, in a central government election, you can have a party sign on your fence, you can have a candidate sign on your fence. And if you had a candidate standing in the Māori electorate, for example, you could have another candidate sign on your fence, one for your Māori electorate candidate, one for your local electorate candidate, and one for your party. And so we just wanted to make it really clear you are allowed one party vote advertisement, and then on top of that, one candidate vote one sign per candidate that's allowed, which is already what the standard practice is. We just want to make sure the bylaw doesn't muddy the waters or confuse that. I apologise, councillors, that's a lot of technical stuff we've just gone through, but it was my strong feeling that if we do this as one recommendation and one debate, we will save ourselves a lot of time in a busy day. If you have a personal issue with any one of these specific things, I'd ask you in your speech to ask for it to be separated. If you want something slightly different to what this is, so let's say you wanted a 0.7 square metre limit for residential signs, then that's your prerogative if you want to try and amend that. But please, councillors, can we take these as a series of individual recommendations that form a package of what the bylaw is that we're trying to achieve? Happy to listen to the debate and then respond to any questions that councillors may have.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I was happy to second this in the interests of political unity across the divide. But I will say this, my primary concern with this bylaw is that things are easier. They're easier for candidates, they're easier for council, and they're easier for the member of the general public to understand whether a sign is permitted or not permitted. And I honestly, and I mean, I've been on council some time and I've read quite a few bylaws, I honestly, reading the bylaw, was quite confused. And so the amendments here are to try and make things clearer, simpler. I see absolutely no need to mess with the time limits of how long a sign can be up and when it has to be taken down. There isn't a problem currently. And putting in time limits, I think will just make a situation where it's a kind of a race sort of thing, like we used to have with the sign parks, where, 1 minute past midnight on the day, everybody will be out with their blooming hammers and their staplers, trying to get the best spots. It works fine at the moment. Nobody's complaining about it. Nobody's complaining about when signs go up. We've got time to take them down. As somebody said over lunch, most of us take them down before election day because we don't want to be in the sad situation of having to take our signs down when we haven't been elected. Okay, so, you know, that's not a problem. So I don't think we need to fix it. In terms of the problem that has inspired this, the problem is all around the large signs, the digital signs, the big billboards. And council acknowledged even before the election that this was a grey area and there was some ambiguity in it. And we'll try and put the we'll try and put the disputes over the big signs that occurred during the election period to one side. What we need to do now is to make it abundantly clear to all concerned, those who want to book these sites, those who are a private business and make their money out of these sites, and your average member of the public, including those that don't like the National Party and want to complain about their signs, and don't like the Labour Party and want to complain about their signs, that this is the rule and it's clear. I absolutely want to make us, with this bylaw, make it clear so that no staff can be kind of like persuaded to go one way or the other by pressure from multiple complaints, where it's a grey area and staff are unsure how to interpret it. I want it to be really clear. And the problem here has been all around those signs, and that is what we need to clarify. So for us to allow an amendment to the bylaw that simply continues to make it a bit ambiguous, okay, if my sign isn't illuminated, am I allowed it? We just need to rule, we just need to rule that out. And in terms of the small signs for local government and the big signs for residential election signs for central government elections, I cannot see why we're trying to do something different than what we've always done. What we'll end up doing is just confusing people more. There's 40-odd candidates for a council election. If everyone has a 1.5 metre square sign, I mean, it's going to be even more visual pollution. And plus, as William made the point, national, with a small n, political parties order their signs as a group. And so we're not actually helping anybody by saying, oh, well, we've got our own bespoke size in Palmerston North. Let's just go with what we've done for a long time, go with the 3 metre signs for the general elections, where there's a limited number of parties, so we're not going to end up with hundreds of, signs on one fence. And the smaller sign for the council elections, so that new candidates don't have to spend a fortune on call flute. As we all know, it's expensive, particularly when you're first standing for council and you're trying to get your name out there. So these just seem to me a very sensible set of recommendations. I don't want to make things any more complicated. Our aim should be to simplify things and not to change things unless there's a real reason to change them. So I'll ask for your support across the political divide. Thank you.
Councillor McLeod.
It's a good cohabitation happening there. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise to also support many of the recommendations before us. I think I've been leaning towards those. I think Councillor Wood beat me to it. I was actually going to move 3, 4, 5 and 6. I agree with the sentiments expressed by Councillor Johnson and also Councillor Wood, but I think my point of disagreement will be on number 1. So I would ask that that be separated for the following reasons. First of all, let me start by saying that I think with the amendments presented to us, it would ensure or go a long way in ensuring that we address some of the concerns that have been raised during last year's local body elections. I think this improvement will provide regulatory consistency and clarity of the rules and reduce any interpretive sort of confusion for candidates and the public ahead of the 2026 and general election and also future elections. I think you also go a long way in strengthening the implementation and enforcement of election signage and rules ahead of future elections. I'm very comfortable with the proposed maximum single sign area, which was highlighted in the report. I believe that we should, or I believe in a more permissive regime, in a sense. For me personally, I would love to move that we keep the 1.5 square meter to bring it in line with other local, other cities around New Zealand. This is not new. I've been to New Plymouth, I've been to Christchurch, I've been to Hamilton, I've been to Rotorua, I've been to Gisborne. They use 1.5 or below. This is not a barrier for new candidates. I think it's a bit elitist of us to assume that because you're a new candidate that you cannot afford a sign of 1.5. Even if we were to introduce a 1.5 square meter, you are still allowed to use your current sign if you want to use them next year. Nothing stops you from doing that. I think we should have, well, personally, I believe that we should have, I'm more in favor of a permissive regime than what's currently being proposed. So I would love to have one separated. I'll move an amendment seconded by Councillor Hayden Fitzgerald. I'm okay with the 3 square meters for central elections, but I think allowing candidates to have up to 0.6 square meters up to 1.5 isn't an issue. It's not new in New Zealand. Every other council do it. We are one of the few councils around New Zealand that has 0.6 as a square meter as a core flute when it comes to local body elections. And I think that we should try something new. This doesn't preclude new candidates from attempting to put themselves out there. They can still use, I can still use my previous signs if I wanted to. It doesn't stop me from doing it, but I think having a permissive regime will determine what you want to do with what you can afford at the time. Elections cost, and we all put money towards election. Whether it's signing up or registering to become a candidate, it costs money, and that's what comes with it. It's the cost of doing this business. If you want to put your name out there, you have to spend. You have to put yourself out there, you have to raise your profile, you have to market yourself. So for that purpose, I'll be favoring the alternative over number 1, but I'm happy to support the rest. Thank you.
All right, we're just going to be speaking to the amendment. Is there anybody else that wants to speak to the amendment? Councillor Zabellin.
Thank you. I'm going to oppose this amendment. I've been reflecting on the workshop that we had a few weeks back and the main reasons why we're looking at these amendments in the first place. And given the comparative lack of problems in previous elections, I honestly think that the thing that caused the actual harm here was not the rules about the signage, but it was the using of real or unintentional non-compliance as righteous political rage baiting online to throw shade on candidates' characters and fitness for office. The size of the sign was not material to this kind of harm. I think the points by the colleagues has been really well made. Let's consult on the, let's vote this amendment down, vote on what's proposed, because that may save confusion and avoid wasted expense for candidates, but it may not amend that particular brand of electioneering.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Sorry, just to clarify, it's just the amendment we're talking about, isn't it? Yeah. So just the amendment, yeah, I support the 1.5. Yeah, much like Councillor McLeod said, a lot of other councils have 1.5 limits, including our neighbours in Manawa too. And if you drove around Fielding during the election period, the world did not end with a few 1.5 metre signs. In fact, it didn't look any different really than Palmerston did. Yeah, it's about that permissive regime. As we've said, nothing is saying you can't have a 0.6 metre sign. I just want to point out to Councillor Wood has a 4-letter surname. Some of us have longer surnames and might appreciate a little bit of extra billboard space because we couldn't fit a photo and our name on a 0.6 metre board and have it readable. I suppose that's a primary motivation there too, a slightly larger board. Does it need to be 1.5? I don't know. Does it really matter though? You can have anywhere in between. There might be some cost efficiency from a printer that says 1.2 is a really cost effective one for them to print, or 0.7 might be, yeah. So I just think it should be a little bit more free for people to do what they like in that aspect as long as it doesn't cause massive harm. So in terms of the amendment, that's all I've got to say on that, yeah.
Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. I won't support this amendment. I don't think it was asked for, and I don't think there was a problem to solve in this regard. I also think there's an issue of many disadvantages for new candidates standing. One of those being cost, and I think this would contribute towards against them really being able to be successfully standing against existing councillors who have name recognition. So from my perspective, I don't think this had been raised as something that needed to happen, so I won't be supporting the change. I'm quite happy to leave it at the 0.6.
Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, just to say I'm not going to be supporting the amendment. And I wasn't going to say anything more, but I just have to respond to Councillor Fitzgerald's example of Fielding. Fielding is not elected at large. Fielding has wards, and they have very few candidates in each ward. We have usually up to 40 candidates standing at the same time. And if you multiply 40 candidates by 1.5 metre squared signs, I doubt there'd be much space on a fence left in Palmerston North.
All right. Do you want to write a reply?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand that Fielding does not have a large election. And personally, if I was a home owner and I've got a 1.5, of course, my first instinct would be to limit the number of candidates I want to put stuff on my fence. So I don't see that being, I don't see that being an issue. Councillor Zabellan said that, this is not an issue that, that was called for or that we shouldn't be discussing and that sort of thing. But this is an opportunity that we're given here to actually amend a bylaw. We're paid to do this, to improve the system. If there are discrepancies or if there are improvements that need to be made, I understand that we all have different views of what improvement means in this case, or what permissible might mean in this space. Some might prefer a prescriptive, or others might prefer a permissive regime, like myself, for example. But I think we are here to actually improve the system, or try to make the best judgment to improve the system, make it more permissible. That's where I was coming from. I didn't see why we shouldn't move in this direction, because other councils are doing it. And there are councils that are still doing it large, that still have 1.5 square meters. We're not saying that we shouldn't have, you should all have 1.5, but anywhere in between, whatever suits anyone's pocket, or if you want to reduce it to dollar amounts, or the fact that a candidate cannot probably afford to probably buy, to have a 1.5 square meter sign, or purchase a 1.5 meter sign. But this amendment does not preclude anyone from also having a 0.6. That's what I'm trying to say. Anyone can have, they can have anything in between. And that's the permissive regime that I was trying to go for in bringing this amendment forward. Thank you.
All right, we've got the amendment there, people, around amending it to include a 1.5 square metre limit to the residential election sign. So we'll put that amendment to the vote, please. We'll rerun the vote, sorry. Okay, can you vote, please? And that has failed. 4 votes for and 12 against. All right, we're going back to the substantive. And is there anybody that wishes to speak against this, the substantive? Okay. We've had three that have spoken for it. So you do want to speak against it, Councillor Dennison? Yeah, we're going to the whole lot. Yep. Yeah, we've started that. All right. Would you like a right of reply? Oh, against it. Do you want to speak? Okay. Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in regards to 4, which is the referring to the timeline of the 9 weeks and actually having a deadline to pull down the sign, I actually think this gives a bit more shape to, it's particularly the elections for local body. And if it needs to be defined more clearly just for local body, I'm happy with that, differentiating it from the central government election. But otherwise, I feel like it's just open slather. You can start putting your sign up now if you're intending for the election. And I just think that's just too loose. And I think 9 weeks is reasonable. I personally don't believe everyone's going to be up the hour past midnight with their drill trying to drill up signs. The thought of us all going around in the middle of the dark trying to get the best sites just is it's kind of a humour. I just don't think that's the reality. And for my understanding, I thought we did have to have our signs down the night of the final election. In the past, maybe years ago, maybe it was just an unspoken thing, but everyone has. And so I also feel like it's reasonable to have some sort of shape for close to get our signs down to tidy up the city again. So I think I'd like to separate 4 for that very reason, just to give some shape around the timeline expectations. When we're talking about a nuisance bylaw, I think it's unreasonable for candidates to have a year-long campaign for council, and I think it's unreasonable to not get your sign down the night before the election finishes. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Wood, so we're going to separate out, we'll do 1 to 1.
I feel like in one where we've separated it for central government versus local government, can I pose amendment to 4 in that setting that those dates apply for local body elections?
Okay.
For both the 12 and 13, if I get a second.
Is there a seconder? Okay, there is with the Deputy Mayor. Okay, let's just get that. I'll be out the door first. Okay, so we've got to take the amendment first, so. Okay, so we've got number 4 there. Is there anybody else wishing to speak to number 4? Okay. You're first, Councillor Naylor, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I can't support this amendment to the amendment, I think, is what we're up to now, for the reason that we need to keep this simple, and I think having inconsistent rules and having different rules for local, it just makes it even more complicated. So I don't think it's really achieving the motivation for us to make these changes is to keep it simple. So no, I won't support this.
Okay, Councillor McLeod.
Yeah, I was also going to say something of a similar nature. I'm more in favor of a permissive regime. I don't think we should be putting any more restrictions around those clauses. So I'm pretty happy to support number 4 in its original form. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Johnson.
Look, I was slightly tongue-in-cheek talking about the going out at midnight, but the real reason for not having a 9-week or any kind of a election period when signs can go up is because it then puts the onus on officers to decide what an election sign is, which Councillor Wood explained quite clearly in his first attempt at explaining these amendments. So I'm not going to be supporting the amendment because what it will do is it will put pressure on officers to determine whether a blue sign that says Vaughan Dennison on it is an election sign if it's put up outside the regulated period. Okay, so it's much easier if we don't have to make those distinctions, and in fact it's not us making it, it'll be staff. So it's cleaner not to have an election period for staff's ease.
All right. You don't need to write a reply, do you? No, thank you. Reading the room well. All right, we're going to vote on number 4, the amendment of the amendment of the amendment. Thank you. And it has failed. 2 votes for and 14 against. All right. We'll get back to the substantive. And okay. All right, we're going to do 1 and 4 separately. Now, I'll just go back to Councillor Dennison if you want any right of reply there. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wood. No. All right, so we're just going to vote on number 1 and number 4. Oh, okay, you want them separately, okay. All right, we're just going to vote on number 1 first. All right, so be amended to include the 0.6 square metre limit for residential signs for local body elections and 3 square metres for residential election signs for central government elections. So we're just voting on that one, please. That's passed, 16 votes for and none against. Right. We'll go back to number 4. Okay, number 4 is back to where we were, removing clauses 10.12 and 10.13 from the proposed bylaw. Okay, we're going to vote on that one, please. That has passed, 15 votes for and 1 against. All right. We will now go to the substantive, which is around 2, 3, 5 and 6. And people that haven't spoken, do they want to speak to this again? I thought, yeah. Does anybody want to speak against this? Because we had that. Okay. All right. We're voting on 2, 3, 5 and 6, please. That's passed 15 votes for and 1 against. Okay.
This one is
Yeah. All right, and now we've got the substantive, which was the original recommendation that the statement of proposal amendments to the signs and public places bylaw 215 election signs and attachment 1 with amendments as amended is approved for public consultation. So I'm happy to move that, seconded by the Deputy Mayor, thank you. We just need to, there is one, the gift that doesn't go away. There is a difference between metres squared and square metres. So metres squared. It's metres squared, not cubed, squared. Okay. So look, no, seriously, that is important because I can just see that coming back to bite people. So we've got the substantive there. Can we get that back up, please? Right. Now, speak to this. Is anybody else, Councillor Naylor, who's speaking against it or for it? Okay.
Thank you. I did just want to make a couple of brief comments in recognising that part of the purpose of this bylaw is to protect, promote and maintain public health and safety. And I recognise the reasons why we're needing to push this through in time for the elections, but there are some broader issues that our community have raised over the last few years that they had hoped we would be able to address through this bylaw, one of which does relate to public health and safety, and many of you will remember the concerns raised in terms of vape advertising close to schools. Now that's an issue of public health and safety. I'm really disappointed that that issue that was raised in 2023, and officers told us we could address that in 2024 when we looked at this bylaw, now to get to 2026 to be told that we haven't got time for this because the election signs are so important. For me, public health and safety and some of the broader issues that really we could be addressing have had to go on the back burner in terms of, for the purposes of us to spend quite a lot of time debating the detail of signs for elections. So just wanting to remind us some of the broader issues that I am hopeful that we'll get back to once this issue is put to rest.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you. Just very quickly, I wanted to say thank you to the officers for putting this together. I know there's been a lot of toing and froing, but I actually think overall the officers have done a very good job of wording this proposed ultra bylaw, and with a couple of minor amendments that have been done here, it provides a really clear set of guidelines for candidates to be able to run for election and not have any of the issues that we've seen at the previous election. And so, you know, a couple of amendments went this way, that way. Do I really care about the results and what the rules are? Not really, but what I care about is that they're clear. And that's what we have with it, what we've ended up here. So, yeah, thank you to the officers for great work in getting that done. And it'll provide a lot of clarity for the upcoming election and future elections.
All right. We will vote. It's passed 16 votes for and none against, thank you. All right, moving through number 10. No, we won't, sorry. We're going to go through to number 11, thank you. And around Church Street fire damage reinstatement, I'll invite Glenn Bunny up, property manager, page 147.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Glenn Bunny, Manager Property. I'll take the report largely as read. Just to make it clear, what we're seeking is cash neutral for us. We're looking to increase the capital revenue budget with a commensurate increase in the social housing renewals budget to be able to receive the insurance payment to be able to undertake the remedial works. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Just a quick question for you around, with like, obviously we've had one quote come in. Do you guys source multiple quotes before presenting this?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Excellent. All right. Oh no, Councillor Harper.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask a question about 2.1 about the fire that occurred in a social housing property on 465B Church Street. If you can just give us an update on that.
Sorry, Councillor, what caused the fire? Is that?
Yeah, just an update on the damage that happened for the Council 1 property.
Yeah, so the fire was reasonably substantial and had some complicating aspects to it, which is why the insurance claim took quite a while to settle. We've now reached settlement and seeking endorsement to proceed with those corrective works.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Glenn. We've got the recommendation there, colleagues. So, Council approve and increase to Programme 180 social housing renewals by up to 252,000 GST inclusive, and an increase to the capital revenue budget of 252,000, again GST inclusive, subject to funding being confirmed. I'm happy to move it. Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. I don't think it needs a lot of explaining, so I'm quite happy to put it straight to the vote. We will vote, please. That has passed 14 votes for and none against. We've got a couple of people out of the room. Okay. Colleagues, just wary of time, and I know some of you are on a hard deadline at 5, so just so you know, we will have a short break shortly, but we'll get through number 13, 17, 20 and 22, and then we'll break, go into part 2 and finish 26 and 27, so that's the plan. Okay, so we move through to number 13, which is the adoption of the triennial agreement. And I'll invite our governance manager to speak to that. That's page 161 of your papers.
Just to say exactly what's in the paper before you, this is something that has to happen after every election. It is some process which is led by the Regional Council. At this stage, the Mayoral Forum has met and had an initial conversation about this document and would like to review it at a deeper level, but has not had the time to do that and will not do that until about June, I understand, Mr Mayor. So at this stage, they're asking us to give an initial okay to this with the intent to review it more deeply over the next 6 months.
Thank you, Hannah. Yes, it's something that happens every triennium, and it's a high-level, macro-level document. Is around how we work together. A lot of it is around civil defence as well. So. This will be a bit more interesting, this one, because of the impending changes to not only the regional sector, but possibly what even the TAs look like in a few years' time. So it's probably even more important. Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Is there any financial delegations with this?
Not within my understanding.
Has there ever been? It talks about decision-making, but it doesn't talk about any financial delegations.
So the purpose of the agreement ultimately is to set up what regional decision-making bodies will, the structure of joint committees, for example, then and the terms of reference for those joint committees. So if those committees themselves have terms of reference with financial delegation, it would be inside that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have the recommendation there. The council adopt the triennial agreement for the Manawatu Whanganui region 2025 to 2028. I'm happy to move it, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Hannah, for your paper. Yeah, there is a couple of committees which a number of you are on. So there's passenger transport, there's climate resilience, there's civil defence, and there's the mayoral forum. Yeah. Okay, if I could just ask you to vote, please. That has passed 14 votes for and 1 against. All right, we move through to number 17. And again, this is from our governance manager, page, the extension of trustee term to the Regent Theatre Trust Board. It's page 227. Over to you, Hannah.
Thank you. Let's try that. There we go. Now I can hear my voice. Thank you. Okay, so you'll be aware that we have a series of CCOs and we have a series of appointments to those boards where council appoints council representatives on behalf of the council as more than 50% of those boards. One of the members that you have appointed to the Regent, Mr. Ferry, his term is up in March. What I'd like to ask you to do is to extend that term through to June so that we can be a bit more efficient and we can make sure that we advertise for all of our CCOs in one round so that we're just bringing the term of this gentleman in line with the others. I appreciate it is out of order, but I hope that it makes sense as to why we do it.
Thank you. Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a query around the timing. So the timing you're saying aligns with the other CCOs, but when I turn the page and see that the other expiries for other trustees, the next one's November 26, and from my mind it seemed like wise just to extend Mr. Ferry's term to the November 26 and put both those up for renewal at the same time, because otherwise we're going to have a quick.
Sure. Thank you. Point of clarity, we need to advertise for all of the CCOs, not just the Regent, and they all have a varied periods based on when their previous end-of-year mop-up was and when they transferred their boards, and then we also have the changing every year of the guard of 2 of them. So no board is ever exactly the same. What I'd like to be able to do, though, is advertise in one load with clarity when we're advertising of when someone would be starting their term, rather than send out several sets of advertising through the year. This would also include the advertising that I'm intending to do to bring to you before your council meeting in June would also include the P&AL board, for example.
So, thank you for that summary. So what happens with the November 26 being out of cycle then with one of the trustees? With this, when we advertise for the June, will we be taking up the consideration of that expiring member in November 26? On page 228, you've got the expiries of the other 5 trustees, and one is November 26, so that seems like that's going to roll around and we're going to have another anomaly of expiry that we'll need to fill. So this will...
Without seeing it in front of me, I'm sorry, I don't know that I can specifically comment. What I can promise you is that when I go to do the advertisements, I will make sure to communicate clearly with the region about their intent on that one. And
When you say you can't see it, on page 2...
No, sorry, I can see that there is a person.
Okay.
What I'd like to confirm is that it is definitely a council appointee and not a co-opted appointee. And that I understand that we've said that it is council here, but I just want to triple check that. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Hannah. Okay, we've got a recommendation to council that council extend Simon Ferry's term on the Regent Theatre Trust Board until 30 June 2026. I'm happy to move, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Being no discussion, we will vote, please. That has passed 15 votes for and none against. All right. We will go to number 20 and 22, and this is around the Community Resilience and Sustainability Committee recommendations. Now, they're pages 237 and 241, and I'll invite the Chair, Councillor Johnson, to speak to those. We could take both sets together, Councillor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to recommend the recommendations from the 18th of February 2026 meeting of the Community Resilience and Sustainability Committee and the recommendations from the 11th of March 2026 meeting to be adopted by Council. Thank you.
And seconder, thank you, Councillor Barrett. Any comments to that? We will vote, please. And that has passed 15 votes for and 1 abstention. I will go back one too, because it's important that we attend to this, and this is around the Joint Shareholders Committee recommendations on page 235, and that we recommend, the committee recommends to the respective shareholding councils that shareholder agreement terms of reference for the committee are amended, clause 2, to add T, engaging with the company on behalf of the Shareholders Committee in relation to how the company shall engage with mana whenua to give effect to Te Tiriti o Waitangi and its principles, and establish the and implements its Te Ao Māori framework. And B, clause 6, adjust 6A, quorum to remain at 5 members, but now require a member from each of the shareholding councils in the Ngā Tapawai Aho. If we could scroll up, please. Is there anything? No, that's it. Okay. Thank you. I'm happy to move that. Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. And I'll invite any comments. Councillor Johnson.
Well, it's a question actually, but who am I addressing it to?
It depends what the question is.
Okay. So the adjust quorum to remain at 5 members, but now require a member from each of the shareholder councils and Ngā Tapawai Aho. How is that different from what it was before?
I'll get governance manager to speak to that.
Through you, Mr. Bear. The what council agreed just before Christmas, which became the terms of reference for the committee, was that the quorum would be 5, and each of the 3 shareholding councils must have had 1 member at the table within that 5 to make quorum. What is being requested by the committee here, the shareholder committee, is that quorum also require 1 member from Ngā Tapu Waiho to be in the room.
Okay, so it's the addition of the member from Ngā Tapu Waiho?
Yes.
Okay. And the clause 2, add, engaging on behalf of the shareholders committee in relation to how the company shall engage with mana whenua, has that been, why is that being added at this point?
This was the recommendation that came up from committee. It was a unanimous decision of the committee to be put back to the 3 councils. It has gone to, which council has agreed already? Horowhenua has agreed it already, and I think Rangitikei is this week as well.
Okay, and what, I guess, my question is, wouldn't that be an obligation on that company anyway under the current legislation? Does it have to be in as a specific amendment to the shareholder
This is
agreement?
about the obligation on the committee.
Yes, I understand that. Are they not under obligation to do that anyway? Why does it have to be put in, I suppose I'm asking?
So this is about the obligation on the committee, not the obligation on the company. So there's currently not this obligation on the committee. The committee is saying they would like this to be part of their role in engaging with the company.
Okay, why is it not an obligation of the committee?
It wasn't included in the initial terms of reference that were agreed under the shareholders' agreement.
Okay. Doesn't really answer my questions, but okay, I'll leave it. Thank you.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just process-wise, because this is the first time this has happened with the new shareholder committee, just to understand what to expect going forward. So is this quite a common thing that's going to occur where we'll get recommendations from committee up to council, or is this just because it pertains to the kind of finding out of the shareholder agreement? How's that going to work?
This is coming to the councils for agreement because the committee itself does not have the delegation to agree its own terms of reference.
Right. Okay.
So
Is
it
this
should
one
be,
of those, like,
it would be rare.
Oh, okay.
Other issues to do with the company which remain with the councils would come direct to the councils and not through the committee.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, so we have the 2 recommendations there. If no further comments, we will vote, please. And that's passed 14 votes for, 1 against and 1 abstention. Okay. We'll now move to, before we go into part 2, we'll move to number 21, which is around Finance, Performance and Audit Committee recommendations, page 239. I'll go to the Chair, Councillor Dennison, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move in a little bit of a variation from what come through committee, but move recommendations for 26, which is the risk management appetite, but actually leave the other item otherwise dealt with and just to leave it pass, and leaving that open for consideration by doing that for a possibility of keeping a olive tree, if you like, olive branch out to Massey to come back with a much better proposal and maybe a more moderate budget without ruling that out at this point. So that's, from me as a chair, that's how I'd like to move it. Look for a seconder for at least that recommendation.
So you're moving to not adopt?
Yeah, I'm moving to adopt 4.26,
yep,
but to leave the other matter otherwise dealt with just as a right of the chair.
You have to move to not adopt it.
Okay, then I'll move not to adopt it and look for a seconder at this point.
All right. No, okay, I'll second it. Okay, Councillor Naylor.
I'm happy to obviously support the first recommendation. In terms of the second recommendation that was dealt with at committee, I would like to move that. It is a committee recommendation that the committee decline the request to sponsor the New Zealand Food Awards. That was considered and debated at length, and so and I support the decision of committee, so I'm happy to move that recommendation today and ask for a seconder.
It'll be the next one we go through, yeah. Okay, anybody else, we'll take them separately. We've got 426, and the risk management appetite tolerance levels, number one, around reconfirming that risk appetite and risk tolerance levels, 4.1, 4.2 in the memorandum titled Setting Council's Risk Management Appetite, and number two, that Council agreed to review risk appetite tolerance levels triennial thereafter. It's a mouthful. Does anybody else want to speak to those? Okay, we will vote on that one, please. And that's passed, 14 votes for and 2 against. Okay, we'll get back into the queue for the next one. This is around the committee declining the request. Yeah, sorry, you've got, yeah, you need to put Councillor Dennison and myself to the top one there. Yep. Good. Okay, does anybody wish to speak to this? Councillor Wood.
Just a question to start with, Mr Mayor. It's not something I've seen before, but perhaps it's my naivete. It says that the committee declined the request, not that council declined the request. So I'm wondering why this is coming to council. Is it not within the committee's delegation to decide? And therefore, why is it here?
You're absolutely nail on the head.
Right, so
the committee does not have the delegation, thus it's had to come up to council.
Sorry, so
The committee did not have the delegation. This was the wording of what the committee put, that they decline it, but they didn't have that delegation, thus it's coming to council to approve it.
So the recommendation was incorrect at committee level.
So we should rewrite that so that says that council decline. Right.
That's great. Okay. I'll leave it to others then.
Okay. All right. Look, colleagues, yeah, it was, yes, a council decision. Sorry, a committee decision. I'm going to get myself in trouble here. Committee decision. And look, I'm a big believer in not relitigating things, but there was actually 3 members of council not in the room that day. It was lost by 1 vote. There was a bit of debate whether it was an awards dinner or it was a program. It was a program. So I think people got the understanding that it was not acceptable for at least more than the majority of members that were there. But it's as 3 members were not there, we thought and we've done this before, Councillor Wood, where it's come back to when it's been a very, very close vote and people haven't been in the room. So that's why I'd like to put it. I'd like to speak in favour of it, and it can go back to the annual budget, and people can have a decent discussion about it with all the facts. Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I wasn't in the room when it was taken, which is why I'm speaking now. I didn't support this when it first came to council, and I don't support it now, and I'll be voting against it.
Okay. Councillor Bowen, online.
Similarly to Councillor Johnson, I'm not a member of that committee, so I wasn't in the room when this was voted for. I have supported it from the beginning. I will continue to support it now. I think I listened back to the debate when I saw how the vote had gone, and there did seem to be quite some confusion, even in some of the maths that was going on about the cost of this as a dinner. It's not a dinner, as the Mayor said, it's a programme where we work with Massey University and other partners. I think it's incredibly valuable for our city. I think it's up to our community to determine whether that value is something they want to see in the annual budget, and I'm happy to support it through to that stage.
Councillor Naylor.
Mr Mayor, could you just clarify which recommendation we're speaking to at the moment? Because there's two on the screen and I think
It's a double negative, so it's that council not adopt the recommendation below.
And so Councillor Dennison, that's the top one.
Yeah.
I've indicated that I would move. So we debate this first, and then if that fails, then we actually. Okay. So I will be voting against the recommendation not to adopt the recommendation. Therefore, if I've got the right number of negatives in there, indicating that I won't support the program being considered in the annual budget. And while I don't have all of the information in front of me, because I wasn't expecting this to be relitigated at this point, what I do remember is that it appeared to be quite a lavish dinner that people would pay $230 a ticket for, as I recall, but actually the overall cost, considering all the money that and in-kind time that was going in, it worked out around over $1,000 a head. So it just, in the current environment where many of our community are saying, please stick to the basics, and I can't afford my rates because I can't afford to pay my own food, it just seemed a really out of context thing to be supporting at this point. In addition to that, from memory, 2 out of 3 of the years it was going to be held in Auckland anyway. So those were just some of, from memory, some of the information. So I'll be not supporting not to adopt it.
I'll just ask the governance manager, because there is a couple of double negatives going on.
Through you, Mr Mayor, Councillor Naylor, you had your negatives correct. What you are being asked to consider right now, councillors, is literally the sentence at the bottom of the page. So you're either agreeing that council decline, or you're not agreeing to decline. No, I'm not making it easier, am I? I don't make it harder. Right. If you vote for this motion, you are effectively stopping the recommendation from committee. The recommendation from committee was to decline to sponsor. So if you vote for this motion, you are stopping the recommendation from committee going any further. Then the next step would be to consider Councillor Naylor's option, which is to vote for the recommendation from committee, that being to decline. So the first thing you're looking at is whether the council, by majority, agrees with the recommendation from the committee.
So a yes vote stops it.
A yes vote stops the recommendation from committee. A no vote will then allow the council to consider the recommendation from committee.
Okay, clear as mud. We'll go to Councillor Zabellin.
Clear as mud. I am happy to let the committee decision stand for many reasons, which I'm sure were very well articulated at the time, although I was not in the room. I was in the room for the questioning. The clincher for me, on top of all the other points which I'm sure were made, was that Auckland Council does not make a cash contribution, despite hosting the awards for the majority of the time. That made it a no-brainer to me.
Councillor McLeod.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I was actually argue that very same point. Contrary to Councillor Bowen, it is a dinner. It is a corporate dinner. They're charging people $200 to attend the dinner. And the reason why I'll be voting against I hope my negative or double negative is correct in this, is simply because this event is hosted I think 3 times in a year, and 2 of those years it's hosted in Auckland, Massey, Albany campus. Now, if Auckland Council does not contribute or see benefit in contributing towards this event, I don't see why we should, when families are actually under pressure, cost pressure, and I don't think it should be rates funded. I believe Massey can fund other means to generate income to make this, to continue with this event, but not from the ratepayers. Thank you.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
I called it this at the committee, and I'm going to call it again now. It was nothing more than corporate welfare, and it's not something that general ratepayers, they would be appalled to know that we fund this sort of thing with their rates while they struggle to feed and clothe their children. So I will be voting no to this motion to let the committee decision stand.
Right, a reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hear all the arguments and some well-put arguments at committee. And this is a really used mechanism from a chair not to adopt the recommendation. So I don't take this lightly. What we would do by supporting not adopting it is not actually committing any money still. And so from my mind, it seems like a little bit of a moot point in the fact that if we support this, there's no money committed to Massey, and we'll leave it up to them to come back to the long-term plan. And if we don't, then we come back and we don't commit any money and don't give them an opportunity at all. And so it leaves our mind open. Clearly what they presented is not popular or it doesn't have any appetite to actually engage in. So therefore I think if Massey needs to sharpen up their opportunity or rearrange the event or whatever else with their pitch, but what I'd rather do is leave it open for them to come through an annual plan process, putting forward, if they do or they don't, is up to them. But for our mind, keeping an open mind for the pureness of an open long-term plan debate. And so, for my mind, it seems quite simple and clear, but if you've got deep reservations about that, vote accordingly. But just wanted to say there's no money committed by supporting this. Thank you.
All right, we'll vote on that council does not adopt the recommendation below, if you can understand that. And that has failed. 5 votes for and 11 against. All right, we'll go back to Councillor Naylor's one. You don't need to speak to that, Councillor. We'll just get it up first and we'll speak to it, or just read it out. So it's around the committee recommends that the council decline the request to sponsor the New Zealand Food Awards. And that's moved by Councillor Naylor and seconded by Councillor Zabellin. Thank you. Okay, everyone is clear on that? All right, so we're voting on that council decline the request. All right? That is passed, 13 votes for and 3 against. All right, we'll now move to go to part 2, and for the reasons of commercial activities and privacy. And I'm happy to move that we move into part 2. seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Okay, and I'll ask you to vote, please. Yep, so that's passed, 16 votes for and none against. Just with some of the items that are still there, we'll attempt to deal with those at the next appropriate either committee or the next council meeting, depending on the urgency of them. Okay. So there's still about 8 there to do, so. No, we've just moved to part 2, sorry. Okay, grab a